which is just like, you guys heard some noise while you're in there, but when they start cutting metal there, it's just like reverberates through the whole shop. It's just like...
Yeah, we've had like serious business meetings, like trying to design a new building with an architect, and we're literally just like yelling across the table from like
sounds like a
funny
episode.
Yeah, it really is.
People like trying to talk about like financials and like potential loans. Like, so this is what our bottom line. It's like
name's Matt Felser, Williams class of 09. Preferred pronoun is he, him, and we are currently in Gypsum, Colorado in one of our custom built vans.
Dave Ramsay, also class of 09, and he, him, and same stuff Matt just said.
I'd say mine, I've lived up here in the mountains of Colorado for about 10 years and an avid skier, mountain biker, have done a lot of outdoor activities. My most recent passion is stand-up paddleboarding. It was kind of a new one that I found at the end of last summer. Get out on the river with a paddleboard and kind of float and enjoy the scenery. So that's been a new fun one for me.
Nice. This is going to be cheating, I think, but I was going to say van life just because it's not in the last year or two, but it's been about 5 years. But I think obviously I've fully embraced it over that time, and I'd say it's pretty much been the main thing I've done with my life outside of anything else really. So,
how long have you lived in a van, Dave?
Just over 5 years now. So
that's an impressive run of living in a van. That sounds like really fun. Both of those hobbies sound really, really fun. How did you get involved in stand-up paddleboarding?
It's pretty popular around here. We're right on the Colorado River, and so a lot of access to it, and it's one that Dave and I played golf at Williams, so in the summer I've always played golf. I got into mountain biking, so it wasn't one that I had a ton of free time between running this business and doing activities to do other things, but it's always been something I've wanted to do. It's super popular around here, so some friends took me out last summer. I got super hooked on it, bought a paddleboard, and rest is history.
And what inspired you to begin the van life?
It's quite a story, but we'll get more into it, I'm sure, later. But yeah, for me, it was wanting to start a business, and the financial overhead of doing that was pretty hefty where I was living at the time, and had always just been interested in RVs, and America is a pretty great place to drive across the country, as you guys are seeing, and that concept had always been interesting. If I could bring my house anywhere and live out of it, and so that timing sort of worked out together, and then it's a pretty affordable thing to do, and I got to sort of scratch an itch that I'd had since I was younger. So yeah, it was a pretty easy decision at that point, but definitely a different lifestyle change.
Dave and I are the co-founders and co-owners of Dave and Matt Vans. We build Class B RVs or camper vans right here in Gypsum, Colorado. And our mission is to make van life accessible to everyone. And that really started with me building a van for myself, Dave living in a van based on his lifestyle choices, and wanting to share that with some more people. And I'll let Dave kind of dive into how that started.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it was about 5 years ago that my kind of journey in van life started. But the specifics of it, I was living in New York City at the time. I'd gone sort of the classic finance route. I worked on Wall Street for a year, then worked for a hedge fund in Connecticut for 5. Around that time, I think I was about 28, 29 years old. It was just sort of that, all right, I've kind of done the normal path. This isn't as fulfilling as I want, and I wanted to kind of do something for myself. And so I actually spun off and worked with another Williams alum, Don Wazorek, who was class of 08, at a hedge fund he had started right out of college. He actually raised money out of Scow Library.
Purple Valley Capital, aptly named.
It's called Purple Valley Capital. So I worked with him for a year, and then actually spun off from that to start my own fund. And on that spin-off was when I got into the van for the first time, and it was really just the financial thing of New York City with rent and transportation and cost of living. It was $3,000 a month plus probably, and I was going to be making about $500 a month at most starting this thing. And so I was trying to figure out, how do I make this work? And I don't want to just give up on the dream. I want to just find a way to make it, actually realistic. So that's where the van came into play. It was a very reasonable lifestyle. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but you could travel around the country, so I could fundraise, I could see clients, I could also see friends and family. Through RV loans, you can get the payments down to $300, $400 a month. And so then it was just kind of like, all right, this makes a lot of sense, and this is going to allow me to try this business out. So did that for a while. I actually started renting my van out because I couldn't use it all the time, and that was pretty crazy to just see the demand. This was out of Minnesota at the time, and I mean, it was booking out 6 months in advance. And so that actually started a rental business for me of growing that fleet. And then a few years later, Matt and I connected. We do a Williams golf trip every year with a bunch of the golf alums, and we were just chatting about our lives, and he was mentioning, oh yeah, I might build this camper van stuff, and I was like, oh, I've had a van rental business. I've been living on one for like 3 years, and we just started to continue to chat and stay in touch. And then he built his first one in April of that year. Took around pretty much the whole country for that summer. And then when he came back is when we really got serious about starting the business. So it was sort of a windy road to get there, and then obviously Matt can fill in the details of his story.
Yeah, I was a middle school Spanish teacher at the Vail Mountain School here in Vail, Colorado for about 8 years. So I guess a different path from Williams, and then many was very attracted to coming out to the mountains and skiing, and thought I'd only stay for a couple of years, but here I still am over 10 years later and not complaining. But I wanted a vehicle that fit my lifestyle, and at that time it was trying to pursue skiing in the winter and biking in the summer. And particularly as a teacher, I had those summers to move about, do some different endeavors and programs, and the van was the one that checked all those boxes. And the reality, even 4 years ago, was that you'd either buy a custom-built van from a professional that was $100,000 to $200,000, or do it yourself. And there was almost nothing in between. And on a teacher's budget, the $100,000 plus option was right off the table. So fortunately enough, a lot of my friends here in Colorado had either built vans before, or were particularly handy, had various forms of rooftop tents or pop trailers, or different ways to pursue outdoor activities. And so I had a cool village around me that helped with that first van, and Dave came out early on in that process, helped a little bit with that first build, and we kind of got it off the ground that way. And it was intended just to be for me to travel in, and I put 13,000 miles on it the first summer. Went to both coasts, got to see family back east, went out west coast for a teaching conference in Monterey. Hopefully you guys get the 13,000 miles, we'll see. But it had that first taste of just the freedom that it provides, the ability to travel safely and comfortably everywhere I wanted with what I wanted. I had my bike in the van, I had my golf clubs, so when I made that travel, I was able to pursue my passions and my hobbies, while also doing some things professionally. So it was a fun first van that started Dave Matt Vans, and we've now built 250 in 2.5 years. So it kind of took off from there.
That's a really fun and fascinating story. There's lots of different, the thread lines of being in finance versus like being in teaching, and then meeting back up to really reconnect over this somewhat obscure passion that both of you had, is a really, really fun narrative, and definitely ties together, finding that weird thing that you're really, really into and making that into something you really want to pursue. And a lot of the people we've been talking to, it's been really trying to get to the heart of like, what makes you enjoy going to work? What makes you like feel like you are your own success story? And this has been an incredible journey for you two so far, given the past year. So thank you for everything you've shared so far.
Yeah, so for me, it's definitely engaging with the van life community and sort of introducing people to that through either our customers or friends and family, or whoever it may be, and again, giving them my perspective on it of how I've utilized the van for my lifestyle, which again may be different than I think the classic sort of van life profile. And so over the years, obviously we've seen housing costs and even apartment costs and all that become pretty unattainable for a lot of people, and for me to be able to share that with people of a very affordable way to live, and again, not just for biking or skiing or camping. It's actually, you could live in a city in this and actually just have this be your way of, having housing at an affordable option. So I've really enjoyed that. I've enjoyed, we've worked a little bit with local governments here to try and, get rid of the stigma around van life, that it's not just for the hippies or homeless or whatever the governments think that this
down
is.
by the river.
Yeah. But there actually are a lot of people that are freelancing out of this, so that they are just choosing to work remotely, even though, and like, I own a house in Connecticut, I just rent it out, and I live in the van full time. So it's a very different lifestyle. It's a very different demographic of people doing it, and trying to open up, the conversation a bit to say, hey, there's a lot of people that you actually would want to attract to your towns for a lot of a variety of reasons. And they may live in vans, and that's actually a very different thing than it used to be in the 70s or whenever they're thinking about it. So that's been a really fulfilling thing, and obviously we've got a lot of work to do going forward. But to see that sort of take off a little bit, and hopefully over the next 5 years going to continue to push and change people's perspectives on this being a very viable option, and sort of a loophole, I call it, in the housing market. So that's how I've felt about it.
When I hear community, I think of all of the experience I've had in education and just where I'm from, etc. And I'll touch on, I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, which is a small city in America, and we're all huge Bills and Sabres fans. That just from a childhood perspective, there's just that tight-knit community of being a Buffalonian, and that carried through to my experience in high school and at Williams. Like, the Buffalo guys always stuck together and always found each other. And then, I think same way I approached high school, college at Williams, and then the school I taught at here in Vail, is they were all very small schools. And so there's a really strong community and sense of community around, being the little, the little guy, if you will, whether that was through athletics, through community building, through the arts, etc. And now living in the Val Valley here in Colorado for 10 years, it's another really small community, and everyone here supports each other, wants to make it work. And as Dave touched on with the housing crisis here, it's very hard to make it work in this valley. Like, as a teacher, you don't make enough to really live in this valley. You figure it out. You have roommates. You don't live in ideal situations, but you love the mountains. You love what you do, so you make it all come together. And Dave touched on the vans, but for me, when I think about community right now, it's really just been this ability to grow a business in this valley. We have almost 30 employees now, and so to kind of be able to provide a livable wage, we provide benefits, a 401k plan for all of our employees, just to allow them to live in this place that's always been a struggle for them, whether they're moving here for the first time, or we've had employees who've been here for 15 years, who are just like, finally I found something that I really enjoy doing. I have enough to at least get by here. By no means are we creating wealth out of our build techs, but like, they're making it work in this valley. And to me is a really powerful sense of community, of being able to make this business work in a smaller town, has been really cool for me. The one that jumps out to me is we both graduated in 2009, right after the financial crisis, and I always look at that as the greatest blessing I've ever had. And that I worked for Overland, which is based in Williamstown, started my junior year of college doing summer programs. And going into senior year, everyone's stressing over finding a job, what their next move is, what their career is going to be. And all I had in my mind is I really loved Overland at that time. I wanted to do that for the summer, so what can I do for a winter so I can do it again? And that's when I packed up my Honda Civic and drove west after graduation. And I moved to Lake Tahoe first to ski for a year, and then do Overland in the summer, and wanted to do it again. And, kind of set me up on this path of doing things that were passion driven, that were, for what I could find happiness in, regardless of what that career led to, what I would make, etc. And Overland led to the teaching job. There was an Overland alum who was teaching at the school here in Vail that kind of put me on to a Spanish teaching job that was available, and I took that and fell in love with that as well. And once again was able to follow a passion both to the mountains, to what I was doing and teaching. I eventually coached. And so, to me, I always look back at graduating at that time that was seen as such a terrible time to graduate. To me, has always been kind of a blessing in disguise. So that's the one that jumped out to me.
It's definitely a unique time.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think similar to the community thing we were just talking about, has been that of obviously Matt and I now have worked together. I've worked with another Williams alum in the previous job. We've got 2 Williams interns here, and our CFO is a Williams grad as well. And so I think it's just been having people that are obviously very intelligent, very motivated, and very creative, and continuing to have relationships with those people that you did meet in classes and in school and in sports. And then obviously after you graduate, all of that is behind you, what you majored in and what sports you played. Cool, is just a story you used to tell. But to keep the relationships going, keep the thoughts going and the conversations going about what they're doing. And everyone just has always been interested in doing something interesting or doing something unique. And so to be able to collaborate with those types of people consistently post-graduation, and then when the time was right to find different endeavors and different sort of ventures that you find like-minded people that want to go on them with you, has been really, the only reason that I'm here really is because of that. And so it is that small school community of everyone does keep in touch. And as you guys mentioned, people are very open, and it's just kind of that connection of, oh, you went to Williams, I went to Williams, and now we're friends basically. And so that's been huge for me, and we've obviously maintained those, and it's led us to be sitting where we're sitting. So
you invited them into your 200 square foot home right away. So
yeah.
Thank you both. I mean, I think particularly the 08-09 financial crisis is very timely, given that we are sort of navigating this pandemic and all of the issues that raises. And it's pretty inspiring, I think, for people like members of the class of 2020 who have to navigate a lot of their own challenges. And that connects directly with your note of, the Williams people and how that's a very meaningful connection. So I think both of those elements are something that will resonate, particularly with young alums, but really speaks to this like weird culture within Williams people where we're kind of obsessed with ourselves, which is not typical of other schools. And so it's really exciting to hear how much that has really played into everything that is your story. And having 5 Williams alums work here is really, really powerful and really cool.
Yeah. Especially given how far away we are from Williamstown. It's
definitely a bit of a hike.
Yeah. For me personally, I think it's been building something from the ground up, working with people that I enjoy working with, and having an impact on, I would say, community. I mean, we have customers all over the country, and so it's not just a local business. There are incredible stories all across from the East Coast to the West Coast of how people are using something that Matt and I started from scratch, that nothing existed, and we worked very hard at creating something, and now hundreds of people have benefited from what we've done. And so that's been a really powerful thing to see. And so I think going down these paths of starting something and trying hard to make it work and trying hard to make an impact, and then to finally see something actually catch hold. And obviously we were fortunate for our business perspective with this pandemic, and that it really pushed people to explore alternative options for travel and all of that. But that has been a very satisfying, rewarding, and joyful thing to me, of actually seeing your hard work and efforts benefit someone else. And we've had to give up van life a bit to enable it for other people. And it's been a trade that I think both of us have been more than happy to make. And I get asked that a lot of, oh, so like, do you get to travel all the time? And I'm like, no, not really, but I can now live vicariously through all of our customers, and that's actually just as enjoyable as doing it yourself sometimes. So that to me is what stands out.
The word that jumped up to me for some reason was inclusivity when you asked what brings me joy, and I think it goes 2 ways. In what Dave was talking about in the business that we've created, it's the community that we've created where everyone is included in this thing that we were passionate about. This ability to bring van life to more people because we enjoyed it has been very joyful. It's something that is a different life path, not anything I ever thought about during my 4 years at Williams. But here we are building something from the ground up and sharing it with so many of our employees, our owners, our community, our customers, like that to me has been very joyful. And I think the other side of it is that sharing of things that I've been passionate about outside of work or education, what I'm supposed to be doing necessarily. So whether that's enjoying a day on the mountain skiing with a good group of friends, or taking a group of students on their first ever backcountry hike, that to me has always been that moment of joy of sharing passions that I've had with others, and getting those who didn't necessarily know it was a passion of theirs to enjoy it for the first time. And the moment that comes to mind right now is my wolf trip with Williams. It was the first time I've ever gone on a hike. And at this point, being outdoors and enjoying nature has become a defining piece of my life. It is why I live where I live here in Dale, Colorado. And, the fact that I was included through Williams on that trip has always been a moment that I look back on so fondly of just like, sure, I'll sign up for this. I guess I'm supposed to. And just had such a great leader on the trip, such a great group. I did whatever the beginner trip was. We hiked like 2.5 miles a day and basically just played Frisbee and hung out in the rivers. And, that to me just like stuck with me all through that. And I think led to, eventually my education and going into teaching, et cetera, was being able to share those moments of like, I never knew this was a passion of mine. And here I am almost pushing my life to be in places that I can keep doing things like this and trying to share it with as many people as I can. So, when you ask what brings me joy, I think it's that inclusion piece, that inclusivity.
It's really cool that it all like ties back into the Dave Matt Vans project, in the sense that like finding that passion and making it into a career is something that one of our other interviews actually very much encouraged and was inspiring people to pursue, because it does take a lot, but that sense of gratification that you can get from like having it be tangible and making your passion your work is a really great feeling. So hearing that you two have found that is truly an inspiration and is really, really cool.
It's not every day, but
this is always the one that gives people that pause. Is like, oof.
Honestly, I think the easiest one for me, or the first one that comes to mind, is I would write a thank you to my parents, without a doubt. They were in education. They're the ones who kind of pushed me to, study hard, do my best, all of those things from a young age. And to me, following kind of what they had set of never pushing me to do things, but always encouraging, opened so many doors for me. And I don't think I'd be where I am today without their guidance through that. And a lot of my passions have come from that. My dad was a gym teacher, so I played golf and lacrosse at Williams, like always been a big part of my life. And my mom was very smart, very witty, and certainly where the personality comes from. And I think it's just a big thank you for supporting and encouraging me from the start. And I always look back on it because it is what's led to so many different opportunities, whether that's Williams, moving to California and then Colorado. Like, it was always encouraged and supported, whatever that wild dream and passion was. So to think of where I am today, running a van life business, like certainly not where the story was supposed to go, but I think because they pushed me and encouraged me to do those things, here we are. So thanks.
Mine was also with my parents. That's a thing. I was like, I feel like, who hasn't answered the parents? Is it other people? Are there other answers for this? But no, I think a lot of the same stuff that Matt said, and mine's a little bit unique in that my brother and I were both adopted. I always think about, so I could have ended up anywhere at the end of the day, and to end up where I did. My parents are both doctors. They're both very kind, caring people. Obviously supported everything I did growing up, and sending me to Williams and all that as well. But I also look back on it, and I think growing up when I was younger, it's hard for you to really grasp and sort of appreciate what that actually is, and you almost just sort of assume that that's just normal. and you grow up in some of these communities. And even at Williams, it's a small community, and so you meet unique people, but at the same time you're all at the same place, you're all in the same location. And so as I've kind of gone out in the real world and now been more independent and have to make your own decisions, that's been the much more clear eye-opener of how much support and what they did and getting me to this point. And it's interesting because my parents are both doctors. They were the classic, you go to Williams and then you work in finance and that's that. And so when I told my dad I was starting a van building company, it just no idea what that even meant. But obviously has been hugely supportive through that process, even though it was not at all what he thought the path might be. And so to see someone that can be that adaptable and to truly say, yes, I want you to be happy and to do what you need to do, and I trust that you'll make it work and do what has to happen and work hard to do it, and that at the end of the day I think is all that matters to them. So it's been huge now as an adult sort of to look back and say, oh wow, okay, I finally get how hard that is to do and what it takes to do. So yeah.
Thank you both so much. I'm sure your parents are super proud of you.
Yeah.
The business seems like it's booming at this point. So thank you both for sharing your space, your time. I mean, literally your space is your van. And giving us the opportunity to chat with y'all. Are there any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Enjoy the trip in the RV. I'm jealous.
Yeah. I think for us, I'll just say, like, we've both talked about this a lot this is what's so cool about, what you guys are doing, is that there are a lot of paths outside of Williams that aren't consulting and finance. And I think for me, I didn't truly open my mind to what could be. And I do think that obviously the path I did take has led me here. And so it worked out just great. But it's really cool to know that I could have done other things and I did have the capabilities, and there are other ways to leave Williams and go make your mark on something. And so we talk a lot about that, it's so cool to have these two interns here that are spending the summer with us, to show them of, think outside the box. Like, this is way bigger than just these classical paths that the Northeast is famous for. And I think Williams has a ton of people that, if you want to collaborate with them, if you want to share ideas and really explore sort of what the options are, that you can make it work. And again, maybe the experience for a couple of years, you do the traditional path, but leverage it to then do your own thing or to do what makes you happy. And I think Matt and I have found that together here of, we're now in our mid 30s, but we're doing something that we're both really passionate about and happy about, which is pretty cool. So I like what you guys are trying to do with this.